Nurse Penny, it's so great to have you here with us.
Welcome.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for having me on. People are hesitant to go on hospice because they think that by virtue of going on hospice, they're going to die faster. And that is not the truth.
My grandfather passed away. He was having a hard time with his health. The doctors came back. You have stage 4 cancer. So he was in assisted living on hospice, and we would take him out all day long, and they'd go back to assisted living at night. We'd bring him to the casino, wherever the hell he wanted to go, we'd bring him to go to get
Restaurants, out to eat.
Him being on hospice was the best year that we had with him.
It's exactly what hospice is about. It's about doing the fun things, like the bucket list. I have no religious background at all. I did not believe in an afterlife. I started working in hospice and I start seeing people deathbed visioning. Really helped me to believe like there is something more.
All right, you guys, welcome back to Undeniable Proof. Today, we have a very special guest that I'm excited about, but Alexa is nervous about.
I am so nervous. For anyone that doesn't know, I am like terrified of death, which is kind of funny because I'm terrified of birth and death. So ironic. And I'm also with a psychic medium.
And you're afraid of anything medical.
And medical. And this is like everything that I don't like all in one episode, I guess you could say today. I don't know. But I'm intrigued.
Well, see, that's how it starts. And I think that's the reason why this next guest has so many followers all around the world, because I think that everybody wants to know about death and dying, wants to know what actually happens when you die. But very few people are afraid to ask the question. So today we have the author of the book, Influencing Death. She is I'm going to call her America's top hospice nurse.
Yes, I love that.
I actually think she's the only hospice nurse that we know online and on TikTok.
Probably. But that's a good thing.
She has the answers. She is Nurse Penny. Nurse Penny, it's so great to have you here with us.
Welcome.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for having me on.
I think that you're handpicked by God, Nurse Penny, because people who are hospice nurses or hospice workers, however you want to say it or phrase it, you have to be a very special person. I just got to say that. And
definitely,
I
could never do it. So
it's tough. It's tough. I don't think I could do it. I remember when my grandfather was passing away, when my grandfather was dying, it was hard because, being a medical provider, I wanted to help him. I wanted to be there for him. I wanted to do all of these things. But the hard part is that for me, it was too emotional. When it came down to my own grandfather, my own loved one, I relied on a hospice nurse like you, Penny, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't take care of my own loved one. It was too emotional for me. And, I know that for you are people's lifeline. I mean, people come to you all the time because, and how many times have you maybe seen it that a nurse or a doctor uses you because it's too emotional for them?
A lot. I mean, remembering that it's different when it's your family member who's dying. For me, it's my job. It's my career. It's what I'm meant to do. I expect that person is going to die. That's the expected outcome. So, it's different. It's hard to see the forest through the trees when you're the family member caring for that person.
Yeah, that's so true. Now, did you start in the medical field? Is this something you kind of always gravitated toward and kind of helping people in this way? Or did it just kind of find you and you were like, I'm a hospice nurse?
So like you, Alexa, I had severe death anxiety when I was in my 30s. I was very afraid of death. And I actually didn't go to nursing school until I was 40 years old. My second husband and I were getting divorced, and I had been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, and I needed a career. So I decided to be a nurse. And I kind of chose hospice for a few different reasons. One, because I did have death anxiety, and I thought, maybe this will help me a little bit. Also, when I was younger, I kind of had a lot of recklessness in my youth. Went to jail. I was addicted to drugs. Gave my son to his dad to raise. So I was looking for something that would be kind of like redemption. I wanted to do service work. And about a year before my husband and I decided to get divorced, his stepmother was dying of cancer on hospice. And when I saw those nurses, I just thought, the work that they do is sacred. It really is service work. And and that's what I want to do. So, went to school at 40, became a nurse, and worked in a clinic for 1 year. And then I worked in a hospital for a few months. And then from there, I went into hospice, and that's all I've ever done ever since.
That's amazing.
That is unbelievable. When you said 40, it's so funny because it really is, you're never too old for anything that you actually want to do. I mean, the fact that you had insane death anxiety, much as I do, and you were like, you know what? Like, just literally started a whole new life at 40. But they say, didn't like Vera Wang design her first ever dress at 40 or 50? It's something like that.
Yeah, so something like that.
Is so inspirational because I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I love the fact that you're kind of saying like, okay, once my kids were grown and I had this time, like it was time to like find yourself, time, like you said, like find your redemption, find something that you enjoy that kind of like puts you back to work and gives you a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. And I will say with my death anxiety, I don't know if that would have been the first thing I went to, but that is absolutely like admirable. It's unbelievable.
But also at the same time, I love the fact, not that I love the fact, but the fact that you went through this really hard time in your life and probably questioned so many things, right? And instead of going down the wrong path, you're like, you know what? I'm going to change my life around. And like you became, I teach people all the time, like being a medium, that like, it's never too late until it's too late, right? It's like, it's never too late until you're dead. So like, it's okay if life takes a wrong turn. It's okay if you go down the wrong path. It's about becoming your own success story, which is really what you did. And who would have known that you would have found it in hospice?
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I have to, before we even get started in all this, all right, can we please just debunk and get into the facts and like just talk about when you're on hospice? There's two different types of hospice, right? There's hospice care and then there's palliative care. Can you please explain to people what that is? Because there's this, I don't know if it's just because I'm Italian, but like everybody says,
conspiracy theorist family members.
We're going to talk about the conspiracies. Let's start with the conspiracies, because the Italians think, at least my Italian family, I have all my Italian relatives, my Italian friends, like the hospice nurse is going to come in and kill you. Like once you're on hospice,
you're done. You're done.
It's all over, right?
Yeah.
So
you're done.
We actually have this going on right now because I was like telling like Alexa's grandmother, who's Greek, like, hardcore Greek, because your grandfather's how old right now?
Oh, 92, 93.
So I'm like, listen, why don't you put him on hospice? Like, hospice? What are you, crazy? I'm like, wait. I'm like, hospice just means that you're on palliative care. It just means that, that you have a life-threatening illness, but you explain it.
Okay. So actually, no, palliative care means that you have a life-limiting illness or a terminal illness with any length of time expected left. That's palliative care. When you go on palliative care, you can continue treatment for your disease. So if you have cancer, you can still do your treatment. It's usually done in a clinic or a hospital. It's maybe a social worker and a doctor that's involved. Hospice does mean that you have a terminal condition with a life expectancy of 6 months or less. You are expected to die on hospice, and most people who go on hospice are going to die, but they're not going to die because they went on hospice. They went on hospice because they were dying. So, that is the expectation, that they are going to die. And hospice care is provided in people's home or wherever they call home, whether that's a nursing home, a house, a van down by the river, under a bridge, wherever they are. We go and take care of them. And when I say take care of, we don't do 24/7 care. Yeah. We provide support for the caregivers. We provide the medications, the equipment. There's a social worker, a chaplain, a nurse's aide, a whole team of people that are helping to support the family or the caregivers, whoever they may be, so that they can care for that person through the end of their life. But yes, a lot of people think they go on hospice, they're going to die right away. And one of the reasons for that is that people often wait until the very last minute to go on hospice. So we have a very short length of stay. The average short length of stay is like 77 days or something like that, because people are hesitant to go on hospice because they think that by virtue of going on hospice, they're going to die faster. And that is not the truth at all.
That makes so much sense.
I want to play devil's advocate here because I want people to really know the truth about this, okay? Mm-hmm. So because some people think, believe me, being a psychic medium, I hear all of it. All right. I got a story to share with you afterwards about this, but people think like, okay, you got 6 months to live if you're on hospice.
Yeah.
You know, you're going in that 6 months. Like that's it. Like basically, if you don't make that 6 months, they're going to kill you anyway. Can you please tell people that you can get off of hospice? Can you please?
People say probably
okay.
Crazy
okay.
up
So there's a couple of different things. Yes, people can live longer than 6 months, and we don't kill them off and we don't kick them off, as long as we still think at any given time that they have a life expectancy of 6 months or less. That's the criteria. So whether you've been on for 30 days, 6 months, or a year or year and a half, we still are asking, do they have a life expectancy of 6 months or less? We don't go, oh, it's been 6 months, you didn't die, you have to get off of hospice now, or we're going to like do something to make it happen faster, which we also don't do, because that would make us murderers, and we're not that.
Exactly.
But people can go on hospice. So somebody who's like 98 years old, and they maybe start having some health issues, and they end up in the hospital, and they have pneumonia, and it's looking bad, and they're 98, and the hospital says, we really think it's time for hospice, and they put them on some antibiotics in the hospital, and then they discharge them back home on hospice, and then they improve, and we're like, oh, well, actually, we do think that this person might live 6 months or longer than 6 months.
Right.
And then if that's the case, then we do a live discharge. So they're still expected to die, but just not within 6 months. I mean, we're all dying, right? But and also people can revoke hospice. So if you have cancer and you go on hospice because there's no treatment available, and then all of a sudden there's treatment available, you can just go, you know what, I don't want to be in hospice anymore, and you can revoke hospice, and you can go and do the treatment. And then you can come back if you're still terminal and you've stopped doing that treatment. So there's lots of different ways that people can be off of hospice. But I've had patients that were on for a year, 2 years. The longest was 3 years, a lady with dementia. Wow. That's not the norm, though. Most people who go on hospice will die within 6 months. Most people will, but there are exceptions for sure.
I'm so glad that you said that, because like most people think that you can't get off, like it's like a one-way ticket, right?
No.
And and I want people to really understand that like it's a choice for your loved one, right? It's a choice that they make, and yes, you can change your mind at any time if it's not working for you.
Right.
Because I got to tell you, still to this day, do you still find that there is there's such false information out there about hospice, like a stigma? Do you find that still just back in the day?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm always combating that on my social media. Always. People think we kill them with morphine. They say you give them morphine, they're going to die from the morphine. So not true. We do not overdose our patients. People say we starve them to death. We do not starve people to death. We want them to eat whatever they want, but people who are dying don't want to eat. Their body is shutting down.
Right.
They don't need the nutrition and calories. They're going into energy conservation. The dying process, the natural dying process is a process, which is Department of Redundancy Department, I know, but it's a process of shutting down. And in order for that process to complete, the vital organs need to keep working until the end. So things start to change in the body intuitively, naturally. Our bodies know how to die. We know how to be born. We know how to die. And digestion takes a lot of energy. So the body intuitively is going, let's just slow that digestion down. We don't need the nutrition. We don't need the calories, and we don't want to expend that energy. Digestion is the most energy consuming process in our body. So it's really normal for that to, so we don't starve people. We just say, if they don't want to eat, don't make them eat. It's that simple. So yeah, lots of myths around hospice and how, we make people die faster because we get paid more money. Makes zero sense. We don't get paid when the person's dead. We get paid while they're alive. Once they die, that's it.
For them.
Yeah, paycheck's over once they die. So there's just a lot of people who feel like, and there are some people who've had bad experiences with hospice too. And there are people who maybe they weren't the decision maker for their person who went on hospice. and they disagreed with them going on hospice. And so they're bitter and angry because they just think, again, that hospice caused a person to die.
Wow. I can't believe how much you have to combat that on social media. Wow. So that is a really big misrepresentation. Well, I didn't really realize. I mean, I'm not in the field, but I didn't realize that you kind of have to like fight these allegations. Like,
yeah, and not only on social media. I mean, I love that I can educate about it on social media, but even in my experience as a hospice nurse working with patients, I've had to, educate a lot, which I love doing, around these things. Like we don't worry about your person getting addicted to morphine. That's not going to happen. They don't have enough time to be addicted to morphine, but also, we're using it as it's prescribed. We're not trying to get your person high. We're trying to use it for what it's for, which is to reduce a feeling of air hunger or shortness of breath. It works great for that. Or for pain management, works really great. But we don't overdose patients. We start them with what's an appropriate dose for them.
I think the hardest thing is making that decision to go on hospice. I mean, I remember my mom and my dad had such a hard time with it. When my grandfather passed away, my grandfather was my number one. He was my best friend, came to all my shows. And I'll never forget, he was having a hard time with his health. And we were in Rhode Island and we just weren't getting answers. We knew something was wrong. We didn't know what that was. Yeah. So finally, we're like, you know what? We're bringing him to Boston. We're going to get answers. So he brought him to Boston, and then come to find out. Within literally minutes. Yeah. The doctors came back, and it felt like minutes, I think, because
it was quick though.
Yeah. I mean, it was within a couple hours. They came back and they said, hey, you have cancer and you have stage 4 cancer. And I'm like, and right away the doctors told me, and I said, where is it? And they says, oh, by now it's in his bones and it's here and it's there. And they were showing me everything.
He was 88.
And I started crying. I mean, because obviously I knew what that was. I was an EMT and I'm crying in the room, and my grandfather looked at me and he goes, it's okay. It's okay. And the doctor looked at me and the doctor goes, why are you crying? Why are you crying? And he goes, it's going to be okay. He goes, we're going to get him on chemotherapy. We're going to get him on chemotherapy, and we're going to put him through the max amount of chemotherapy that he can go through. We're going to hit this so aggressively.
88, blah, blah, once blah, again, blah. 88, this man.
Stage 4 cancer in his bones. And I looked at the doctor and I said, unfortunately, we're going to pass. And the doctor looked at me, and the doctor was like, what do you mean you're going to pass? I said, well, he's not going. I said, this man's 88 years old. He's got cancer going through his bones. It's stage 4. He's not going in for chemo. And I remember the doctor was very gentle. He didn't push me, but he said to me this. He goes, listen, I know you're upset. I know you're crying. Yeah. He said, oncology gets booked up very quickly. So he's like, I remember it was a Thursday. He's like, I'm going to make an appointment for Monday. He's like, and if you want to go, if you change your mind, the appointment's there. If not, you just cancel it. But at least you have the option where I'm writing you the referral. You're all set and you're ready to go, and your grandfather will have the best care in Boston. And at that point, I remember saying, nope, he's not going to go for this. And I talked to my grandfather about it. And my grandfather's like, at that point, he didn't know anything. He was an old Italian man.
Wasn't he? Poppy was so cute. He was kind of willing. Wasn't he like, I'll get this surgery.
He's like, if you want me to go for this, he's like, if you want me to go for the operation, I'll get the operation. And I tried to
he was like ready to go. He's like, all right, when is it? You're like, what? No, like, no.
Well, I said to him, I said, listen, he says to me, I want you to make the decisions for me. And my mom was in no state. My dad, he didn't want to make the decisions. And I was like, I'm going to make the decision. And I remember signing, with my grandfather and getting the hospice paperwork together. And even though I knew it was the right decision, I cried. I cried and I felt so guilty signing that paper.
Well, because it's almost in a way acceptance.
It is. It's absolutely acceptance and acknowledging that person's going to die. And you can see what we're up against in hospice when within the healthcare system, there are providers who are reticent to talk about the fact that a person's dying. They want to do everything. And it's really not their fault because they go to medical school to learn how to save people's lives. So death is seen as a failure. And that's what it comes down to. And my own dad, so I was a hospice nurse for 5 years when my dad got idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is a lung disease. He did chemo, which I was like, please don't do chemo. You don't understand. This is going to be really bad. It's like, he did the chemo. Right. He did steroids. Another thing, I was like, don't do the steroids, because you're going to have some issues with that. And sure enough, he did, because he depleted his immune system. and he got pneumonia and he ended up in the hospital. And every day I went to the doctors and I said, listen, I'm a hospice nurse, so you can level with me on this. I know he's terminally ill. What's going on? No, it's fine. We figured it out. This is what it is. We're going to treat it. Then they said, oh, it wasn't that. It's this instead, which was pneumocystis carinii. It's a kind of a fungal infection in the lungs. And so I did my research. I'm like, okay, so the survival rate for pneumocystis carinii in someone like my dad who had a poor immune system is like 50%. It's low, right? And so again, I'm like, I can take it. What's going on? My dad finally ended up in the ICU on a BiPAP. And when I walked into the room, he said, well, they're saying it doesn't look good. They're talking about hospice. They think maybe I have a year left. And I said, well, that doesn't even make sense, because if they're talking hospice, that's less than 6 months. And
Right.
he said, and my mom was like, yeah, can you please call the pulmonologist? We don't know what's going on. So I called the pulmonologist and I said, is it time for a hospice referral? And he said, yeah, I think so, because if this happens again, he'll end up on a vent, and I don't think that's what he wants. And I said, I know that's not what he wants. So
Right.
immediately we were like, hospice, great. So he had been on a fluid restriction. He had been on a diabetic diet. So we went out, we got him a big old Starbucks. We got him a plate full of meat from this meat buffet around here called the Golden Corral.
We know the Golden Corral. Yes.
Yeah. So we each spent time telling him like how important he was. The plan was to take him home on hospice the next day. So that was the plan. I'll be your hospice nurse. We got to get the equipment into the home. And he died that night in the hospital. My dad was on hospice for less than 12 hours, and I am a hospice nurse. And I was trying to get him on it, and nobody would listen. So that's where we're at with that.
My goodness. Well, one, I'm so sorry. And I mean, was that experience, I feel like I kind of already know the answer, but was that experience a little different for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so here's one thing, like the death was beautiful. I mean, we weren't there with him when he died. But we had the best last few hours with him to be able to. My dad was from Texas. He grew up really poor. He loved to eat. He loved the meat. Like it was so nice to have. My mom to this day will say hospice is the greatest thing ever, even though he was on it for such a short time, because it allowed us to give him what he wanted at the end of life. We were allowed to acknowledge that he was dying. We had beautiful conversations with him. Each one of us went in, had one-to-one time with them. So it was beautiful. But the grief that I went through was like nothing I've ever experienced in my whole life. Like so different than I couldn't even have ever imagined what that would feel like to have that grief where you're just on a fucking roller coaster. It's like up and down. Sorry, I swore.
You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want.
We swear. We're not too, But that's so fun. That's kind of what we do. Poppy at the end wanted donuts randomly. Remember? Jelly donuts.
My grandfather.
We would stop at Dunkin'. We'd be like, you can have whatever you want. Wine, red wine.
He wanted wine. My grandfather, all that would keep him happy was wine. That's what he wanted. He wanted wine. At night, he wanted 2 glasses of wine. And I remember, it was actually funny, I got in trouble because
we just were talking about this today.
Yeah, I had him on hospice and he was in assisted living. So he was in assisted living on hospice and we would take him out all day long and then he'd go back to assisted living at night. We'd bring him to the casino, wherever the hell he wanted to go, we'd bring him to
restaurants, out to eat.
Get scratch tickets. It was him being on hospice was the best year that we had with him.
Oh, I love to hear that so much.
Yep.
But I'll tell you, I got in trouble because there was one day, there was this new nurse that was on and hospice is brought in, right? It's not something that they provide in-house at the assisted living. It's something that is outsourced. So long story short, I walk in, I just got back from the liquor store. I pour the bottles of wine and whatnot for him and I get the wine glass out and this new nurse comes in and she goes, "What are you doing to him?" And I go, "What do you mean?" I said, "I got him a glass of wine." She goes, "You can't give him that glass of wine." She goes, "You know how much medication he's on? He's on this medication, that medication, the other medication." And I go, "No, he's on hospice. He can have it." She goes, "Oh, no, he can't." So she takes the glass away, or wine away from him. So of course I'm yelling back and forth with the nurse. She's like, "I'm going to call the doctor." I said, "Call the doctor." So of course she calls the doctor. She comes back in. She calls this hospice doctor and she goes, "He said that he can have the wine." So I said, Yeah, I go, he's on hospice. Of course he can.
He can have whatever he
So
wants.
she looks at me and she goes, that's bad practice. She goes, I can't believe. She goes, I'm a nurse and I'm serving wine to this person. She goes, and he's on all he's on morphine, he's on all this medication. I go, if whatever he wants, he can get. This man's only got a few more months to live. And I'll tell you, my grandfather, he was kind of like snickering. He was like so happy with the wine.
Oh, he was the jelly donuts we'd bring him in the morning, the wine. I mean, it really is, dare I say, enjoyable, like at that time, but
was not allowed to tell, we were not allowed to use hospice in front of my grandfather. I was not allowed to tell him that the hospice nurse was coming. Because my grandfather, like, he knew what hospice was. So he knew the nurses were coming, but I never told my grandfather that he was on hospice. That was our one rule that my mom told me, that my dad told me. And
they were a little scared about it too, your parents. So that was like another reason, but yeah.
So have you had that happen? And
oh yeah, all the time. So I'm curious to know why in your situation, nobody wanted to say that he was on hospice. Were they afraid that he would then know that he was dying?
My grandfather was so afraid of dying, afraid of dying. So like, even though he was even though he had all these issues wrong with him, like he was sick. This man had spontaneous fractures. I mean, meaning that all of a sudden his arm would break and nothing would cause it. Right. And I would try to like hint to him and be like, cause he'd be like, Matt, what's going on with my arm? It's in a sling. What's going on with my arm? And I said to him, Poppy, I'm like, unfortunately it's the cancer, you have cancer. And the doctors are saying it's not going to heal. And he looked at me and he goes,
it's my favorite.
It's going to heal. I'm going to be fine. This will be back working, and then the same thing, like, my mother-in-law came over one day and his hip was bothering him. He couldn't get up. He actually had the spontaneous fracture. His hip broke. And he's like, why can't I move my hip? Whatever. And we told him it wasn't getting better. He's like, nah, it's going to get better. So he was really in denial. And I think that my mom didn't want to break his faith by saying, like, we signed you over to hospice. So we never actually told him that. And I did have conversations with him, though, and tell him, like, I want to let you know that you are passing, the doctors are telling you. And I'll tell you, that was the hardest conversation I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
The hardest. And I actually want your advice on that, on what to say. I mean, I flat out came out and had to tell him. I told him, unfortunately, Poppy, we've tried this, we've tried that, we've tried the other thing, you're passing, you're dying. And he was like, I'm not dying. What are you, crazy?
Or he goes, who's dying?
He said, you got the wrong grandfather. You must be talking about your other grandfather.
You're talking about your other grandfather. Matt's like, oh, no, it's you.
Have you dealt with that? What happens? What do you do in hospice?
Yeah. Sometimes people don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. We say that's fine if you don't want to talk about it. Everybody has the right to know that, well, the hospice benefit is an elected benefit, so people have to know that they're signing up for it. They have to know what it is because they're electing it. But if somebody doesn't want us to talk about that with them, then we won't. But, Barbara Carnes is an author who is a hospice nurse from the 70s. Like, she's been a hospice nurse forever. And she always says, we live in our bodies. We know when we're dying, which makes sense, true. Right? Wow. Because if you're sick, you're sick, right? And so, like, it's fine. If somebody says, I don't really want to know, I don't want to talk about being on hospice, that's okay. But what I love about the story that you just told is that is exactly what hospice is about. It's about doing the fun things, like the bucket list, and it's so amazing that he got to be on hospice for that long. And instead of going to doctor appointments and being sick from chemotherapy and having surgery and having to recover from that, which he probably wouldn't because his body is dying, he got to go to the casino and he got to drink his wine and he got to have fun. And that's what hospice is about. And that's why, like, I really try to encourage people to accept hospice as soon as they're eligible. Don't wait until you're on your deathbed. We want to be able to help people to do those things that they want to do, whether that's getting them a wheelchair or oxygen or whatever they need to be able to go to the casino. We love to be able to help facilitate that for people. So I just think that's so great that he got to do all those things. And it's funny because when you're talking about the nurse saying, you got to have the wine, that's not a hospice nurse for sure. One of the things we run into a lot is family members who say, I don't want him to smoke cigarettes anymore. The reason he smokes cigarettes, or the reason he's on hospice, is because he smoked cigarettes and now he has lung cancer. And we're always like, man, that ship has sailed. Nothing those cigarettes are going to do to him that's any worse than what's going on right now, which is that he's going to die from that. Let him smoke. That brought them great joy and comfort in their life. So let them have it, let them eat what they want. If they're diabetic, let them have their ice cream. If they want to.
Well, that was kind of a sad case that we had. So now we had Poppy, who was coming out with us and, having his wine and going to the casino and dressing up for Halloween. And we had him doing everything. But then one of his roommates at the assisted living, now their family was very, very against hospice. Another family that was like, no, like we're not putting him on. And he was in pretty bad shape. I mean, he had so much fluid that, he couldn't even have water.
He was on fluid restriction. He was on
fluid restriction, and all he wanted was just a cup of ice cream. That's all he wanted. Ugh. And they waited until they finally put him on. Actually, this is very similar to your dad. And remember, he had his water, he had his ice cream, and then he passed that same night. Mm. And, it was just kind of sad because here we were kind of taking Poppy. We were he's like really living his time. And then all this man wanted was like a cup of ice cream, and they just wouldn't do it.
You also have to weigh the benefits too. Like I know one of my grandfather's friends, right? Also was diagnosed with cancer around the same time that he was. And, he had a wife and it was a very different situation. And his wife didn't want to let go. When his wife was like, you know what? I want everything done to save him. And the man at the time, his friend, was like, I want to go through it all. I'm going to go through chemo, even though he had stage 4. Actually, his wasn't even stage 4, it was stage 3. He's like, I'm going to go in for chemo. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And they kind of were like, I can't believe you're putting your grandfather on chemo. Well, anyways, don't you know that he went in for the chemotherapy for the whole 9 yards. And he actually didn't live as long as my grandfather because, the chemo hit him and he was 88 years old and that chemo tore through him to the point where, I mean, unfortunately, it's terrible to say, but he was unrecognizable. When I went to his wake, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. So I think that, what I really want people to know and what you've done on social media, and I think why you have so many millions of people following you, is really because you show people, listen, death does not have to be this way. It does not have to be laying in a hospital bed. And, I
love how positive you are. Even talking about it, like I saw you light up when we talked about Poppy's experience. Like I can tell how much you love what hospice actually means for people and like what it could mean if you go about it that way.
Yeah. And there have been studies done that prove that people who go on hospice can actually live longer than people who don't go on hospice because their quality of life is so improved. I want to circle back to Alexa's question about, being desensitized. I've never felt desensitized. I definitely have a lot of empathy for my patients and their families, but I also have excellent emotional boundaries. So what I mean by that is, again, these are not my family members. I'm there to do my job. To me, like when the person dies, which was the expected outcome, if I have made sure that they were as comfortable as they could be at the end of their life, if their family was prepared for what was happening and they weren't afraid and they knew how to take care of them, then when that person dies, it's a job well done. I've done my job. It's very satisfying. And there are sad times too, but it's to me, it's more fulfilling than it is sad because I've done a great job to help these people. And that's the whole goal. I didn't go to funerals and I don't do patient care anymore, by the way. I'm just about ready to retire in a couple months.
Oh, wow. Well,
yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I still work for hospice. I do quality assurance now for hospice, but, people would say, well, did you go to their funerals? No, because I have a life outside my work. And when I worked in a hospice care center, I've literally taken care of thousands of dying people. I don't have that kind of time to go to all those funerals. And so I always thought if I'm going to go to one for someone, I'm going to have to go to all of them because that's where professional boundaries are, and I have to be like asking myself, if I'm going to do this for this person, would I do it for all of my patients? And if the answer is no, then I shouldn't be doing it. So rare exceptions that I made. One was my husband's great aunt died in the hospice care center that I worked at. And she was there for 18 months, which is a very long time.
Wow.
And so the family kind of expected me to go because I'm kind of like the whatever coattail relative or something like that. And then I did have a patient, who I talk about in my book, actually, a young woman who was in her home with her family, and she had daughters, and we ended up doing continuous care. So I was there like 8 hours a day for several days. She had terminal agitation. I had her on multiple infusions. It was just a very, very challenging situation, and I got really close with the family. And so that was only the other funeral that I ever went to. Other than that, I was like, I just can't go to all these funerals. I have to have a life outside of, self-care is really important when you're doing this kind of work. You have to be able to,
absolutely,
take care of your own self to be able to take care of the others.
Right.
So let's talk about deathbed visitations or deathbed. What do you call it? Is that deathbed visions?
Deathbed
is that
visions?
Yeah. And wait a minute. Is this also? I need to know about this. I know this from a psychic medium standpoint. You know this from a hospice standpoint. Mm-hmm. Is this actually a medical term? Is this actually taught when you go in and you sign and you learn to be a hospice nurse?
Yeah, deathbed visions or end of life visions or visioning is referred to in different ways, but it is a part of our literature. It's part of how we determine when we think somebody's close to the end of life. There are a few things that could be considered like, I don't know, paranormal, if you will, that we consider actual end of life signs. End of life visioning is one of them. The reaching that people do, like reach into the air, do this kind of stuff at the end of life, we look for that too. People doing what we call travel language, where they'll say things like, I need to get out of here, I need to go home, I need to pack, I need to take a trip. Like talk about going somewhere, usually means that they're going to be dying soon. And then the other one is the end of life rally, which is when people they're really close to the end of their life, and then all of a sudden they have a great day. They're like, hey, I want to visit with my friends and bring me a meal, even though they haven't been eating for weeks. They've been sleeping all the time, and they have this burst of energy. And of course, families think, oh, they're getting better, they can come off of hospice. But we really know that they're actually getting closer to the end of life. It usually lasts like a day or less, and then they almost always die within about a week. So that's another phenomenon. We don't know what that is. We don't know what causes it, and we don't really care that much because we love these things. But yes, deathbed visions especially tell us that somebody is starting to transition. The transitioning period is usually like a few weeks before death. So when a person is starting to either talk about seeing their deceased loved ones or pets, and they don't always talk about it. Sometimes they won't talk about it. Or if they're doing this thing, which I think, and when they're doing this is a kind of a stage of the dying process where they're not communicating with us anymore, really. They're just kind of like doing these things with their hand. And if you ask them, what are you doing? They wouldn't be able to answer you most of the time. But I think that they're reaching for those visions of the people that they see, because oftentimes the visions are up above them or in the corner of the room. So yeah, it's really common.
Acknowledge if they acknowledge them, but that's true, because we used to talk to Poppy a little bit. Sometimes he used to mention that he saw his deceased wife or girlfriend, and then he would kind of backpedal. And he would say, I'm just hallucinating, or it's just the medication.
Yep. I want Nurse Penny to talk about this, because this is something that happened with me, right? Is that obviously I know that deathbed visioning is real, right? I call it spirit visitations. Right. So before we live, in the psychic world, before someone passes away, our loved ones do come and visit us, especially because we're getting closer to death. Right. And it makes them excited because they know okay, well, if I'm seeing my mother, if I'm seeing my father, familiar faces, right? They don't get nervous. It's more of oh my God, where have you been? Oh my God, I can't believe that you're here. So what was interesting is when my grandfather was getting close to death, I used to ask him every day, hey, did you get any visitors today? No, you're the only one. No, did someone come and see you? And he'd be like, who?
Yeah.
And then we would go through the list and I'd be like, Poppy, I'm like, did anyone come? I'm like, did Grandma Mary come? Did your girlfriend come? And my grandfather used to be like, Matt, they're dead. What are you asking me? What are you asking me? Are you trying to test me? You know, do you think I got dementia? I'm like, no, I'm like, if you seen that, it would be normal. He's like, no, I didn't see that.
No.
So then the very next day, right? The very next day, the hospice nurse that was there came up to me and said, hey, Matt, who's Virginia? So I'm like, oh, that was his girlfriend that passed away. Mm-hmm. He's like, who's Mary? I'm like, that's my grandmother. Why are you asking me this? So he's like, oh, because your grandfather was having all these conversations about Mary being there and Virginia being there and all of these things. And I'm going to tear up. He was saying all these conversations. So I got all excited. So of course I ran in the room and I was like, hey, Poppy, I'm like, what's going on? It's like, oh, nothing. Turn the TV on, whatever. So I turned the TV on for him. And he's like, I'm like, did someone come visit you today? No one was here. So I'm like, oh, really? I heard that Virginia was here. No, she wasn't here. No. Like I heard that Grandma Mary was here. No, she wasn't here. So then I said to him, I go, Poppy, I just talked to the nurse outside and she just said to me that you were here talking to her for a good hour, that, you know, your girlfriend was here and that your wife was here. Grandma Mary was here. Mm-hmm. And he had said to me, no. So I said, did you? So then I'm like pissed, right? So I'm like, did you have that conversation with her? And he's like, yes, I did. I'm like, do you remember having the conversation? He's like, yes, I did. I'm like, why did you tell her that then? He goes, oh no, I saw them, but I was hallucinating. He's like, it's the medication. The medication is doing that to me. So I go, no, I'm like, it's not the medication. I'm like, you really saw them. And then I said to him, you know, what did they say to you? What were some of the messages? And I'm like asking him this. Mm-hmm. And he would not talk to this day. He would not talk to me about it.
Yep. I have a perspective that I want to give you on this. You know, so as I'm listening to your whole story, this is what I think. Your grandfather saw how you reacted when he was told he had terminal cancer. You cried. It hurt your heart so bad. You cried right in front of him. He was protecting you the whole way. He can't acknowledge that he's dying. So really, he knows he's dying, but he's telling you that he's not. And I think he was doing that because he was protecting you. And to admit that he's having deathbed visions is to admit that he's getting closer to the end of his life. I mean, I could be totally off the mark here, but that's
I think you're right on.
That's what I'm starting to think, is that he was protecting you. But I've had patients too where, and so he was willing to tell the nurse about it, right? Because that was no big deal. But to acknowledge that to you would be to be acknowledging once again that he's dying and he's having a hard time seeing you hurt because he knows that it's hurting you to know that. Also, I had a patient one time who, and I talk about her in my book too. I knew that she was starting to fail. She had lung cancer and she was just getting weaker and more frail. She always wanted to come in and sit at the dining table with me. So she'd come and drag herself in and sit at the dining table and I'd sit with her. And I always would ask people these questions because I want to know where they're at in their progression towards death. So I asked her, have you been seeing anything out of the ordinary lately? And she said, like what? And I said, oh, like maybe some people who have died. Oh, no, nothing like that. And I said, oh, okay. Because, you know, that's really normal. It is? I said, yeah, it's normal. People will see visions of their deceased loved ones at the end of life sometimes, and even their pets. And she goes, really? And I go, yeah. And she goes, well, my dad's standing in the kitchen over there. I just didn't want to tell you because I thought you would think I was crazy. And of course, I didn't have to turn around and look because I knew she was 80 something years old, that her dad was not standing in the kitchen. But a lot of times, and even family members will say, hey, you know, call me in the room. Hey, we need her to have something for the hallucinations. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, she keeps pointing up at the sky and talking about people. And then, you know, I'll come to find out that she's talking about people who died, who she has seen. So it's right. So common, but lots of people are in denial about it. They don't accept that, you know, that it's not just a hallucination. And we do not think of visions as hallucinations at all. We differentiate hallucinations from visions. Hallucinations are usually something that is going to be more disturbing to the person, whereas visions bring them comfort. Hallucinations are more disjointed. They don't often make sense. It's a spotted animal on the roof next door. It's spiders coming out of the ceiling. You know, something like that we will treat we'll either figure out what's causing it and eliminate that if it's a medication, or we will give them medication to help with those hallucinations. But we do not medicate away visions at all, because they bring so much peace and comfort to the dying person.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever had it happen where, well, I'm sure you have, right? That like, is this a common thing that like, as you're talking about with that client that you had, or patient, I should say, that was at the table and like wasn't talking about her father being there to family members? You find that a lot of those hospice patients won't talk about what they're seeing and hearing?
Yes.
Because they know.
Yes.
Wow.
They don't want to be thought of as crazy, or they don't believe it themselves. Yeah, it happens a lot. I think a lot of more people have deathbed visions than are willing to talk about. And they could be people who just never believed in that type of thing. And then all of a sudden they're seeing these things and they don't know what to make of it. It's harder to reconcile that because they never believed in this.
That's true. Because there's not always like your fans, right? Like someone that's like a fan of you, or even Nurse Penny here, like they'll know like, okay, I know what I'm seeing. Like they accept that. They're willing to recognize that and see it. But for those that are more skeptics and that like don't believe in what you do, don't believe in angels and heaven, whatever, they're probably like, oh no, these are definitely hallucinations. Like they have to be like,
I'll tell you, my dad's aunt was a big skeptic, huge skeptic. And, she never was that way. She believes in God, believes in the afterlife, but then she lost her son. And when she lost her son, she was like, that's it. She took the cross off, never went back to church. And even being a medium, like I tried to read her, I tried to give her readings, connect with him. And she just didn't want, it was just the grief of losing her son was so bad that she didn't want to believe anything. She didn't want to believe in the afterlife. They had messages for her, anything. And what's actually so interesting is that right before she had passed away, and it's actually very interesting. So it was like 6 months before she had passed away. She actually was in the kitchen cooking and she saw her son stand there right in front of her for a minute. Ooh. Like to the point where she got so shocked that it was him. She dropped everything on the floor, called me up crying and was like, I just saw Johnny. I just saw my son. What is this, Matt? Am I dying? And, I talked to her about it and whatnot. And then she never talked about it again. Like that was it. She never had another conversation about it. But I think that it was enough because she was such an atheist to the point where like she was so bitter and so mad and so upset that I think that 6 months before she died, I think he came to her just to say like, Mom, I'm here.
Right.
There's an afterlife and, it's okay for what's going to happen. Yeah. And it changed the whole way she thought about everything. Yeah. Everything. I mean, she was like to the point where she called me up and she didn't believe in what I did, even though I gave her readings and everything. Like, it was like, yeah, it's real. It's true. I saw it. I know what I saw. And it's like, that to me was something.
That happened to my sister. So in my family, it's my sister, my brother, me, and my mom. And after my dad died, he came to me first after he died. And my sister was like, why you and not the rest of us? And I said, because I'm connected to death through my work. So I just think that's why he came to me. And then he ended up going to my sister as well in a different way than he came to me. When he came to me, I was sleeping and it was like bright orange energy. And it was him. I could feel him. He was there. He was talking to me. He said, it's time to go. And I said, oh, okay, I'm going to have to say goodbye to the kids. They're going to miss me. And he was like, nope, it's not time for you to go. It's time for me to go. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he kind of left. With my sister, she had been going through a really hard time with her daughter who was on drugs and had a 4-year-old. And my sister was like really struggling with what to do because she had bought a house for her to rent and she didn't want to evict her because she had the little girl and she was just like not knowing what to do. But, and she's her only child, and she's addicted to heroin and meth. And she's just, so her husband taught her how to meditate. And she said the first time she meditated, she saw a bench with my dad sitting on it and a dark figure next to my dad. And she said, and they were there, and she said, I don't know what to do. And my dad said, Laura, you know what to do. And it just gave her the strength to do everything she needed to do. And spoiler alert, my niece has been clean now for 9 years and it's a beautiful situation that ended up happening.
Oh, congratulations to her.
So my sister was like, did not believe in God before this. And now she's like, I believe in God. She's like, I'm not religious, but I believe in God, because that was God sitting on the bench next to Dad. And each time she meditated, Dad got like more transparent, but the dark figure remained. So then with my mom, it was a couple years, like way after my dad's death, where she said, I keep having these little wisps. And I said, what is a wisp? And she said, I don't know. It's like a little wisp. And then I hear Dad's voice and he'll say something to me like, honey, be careful. And so, but I don't think it's Dad, because I don't believe in the afterlife. And I said, oh, okay. That's weird. Really weird, Mom. And then a while later, I asked her, are you still having those wisps? And she goes, yeah, but they don't come as often. And I said, well, what do you think that is? And she goes, I don't know. I kind of feel like it's Dad, but I don't believe in the afterlife. And I said, well, Mom, if you think that's Dad, you probably believe in the afterlife.
Right.
And then my brother is an atheist, and he has never, he has never, ever talked about my dad coming to him. And when my sister and I tried to have a conversation with him a few years ago about afterlife, he was just like, my brother's just a kind, gentle person. And we had never seen him get so angry as he just adamantly said, there is nothing after this life. Nothing. And we were just like, whoa, man, you're really getting pretty bent out of shape over this, but okay, and so I just feel like he is not open to it. You're the psychic medium, Matt, so you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you have to be open to it in some way to receive that.
You have to be open, but also, remember that anger always comes from extreme hurt and pain, right? It comes from hurt and pain over a situation, a certain person, so on and so forth. So I think that when people negate it and they say like, no, and they get mad and they get upset, it's because they're just hurting inside, right? And eventually, hopefully they'll come around, but you got to leave it to God. I also want to bring up another thing that I think is really important too, that we cover. And because this happened to me, it also happened to Alexa. And I want to hear like if it has happened to you with your patients as well. I was with my grandfather every day. And obviously the night that he was going to pass away, I was not going to go to at that time he was in a hospice facility. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not going tonight. And my parents came over and they had just gone and seen him. And I was like, nah, I don't want to go. And then we were in bed. I remember it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And
it was raining.
It was raining. It was terrible. It was all the way downtown. And I looked at Alexa and I go, I got to go. I got to get there. And literally he was doing fine. He was doing okay. Yeah. And Alexa's like, if you need to go, you go. So we both got in the car. Go. We went and we walked into that room and, I just told him I loved him. We said our goodbyes, whatever. And he looked at us and he's like, I'm not going anywhere. And he's actually yelling at Alexa saying, stop crying. Don't cry.
I was like right over him, like giving him a kiss on like his head. And the tear happened to like fall right on him. And he asked him that. He's like, why is she crying? He couldn't even speak. He's like, why is she crying? And he's like, I'm fine. Like, there's nothing wrong. And literally the next afternoon, probably like 12 hours later.
Yeah. That morning, they called us up and they said, if you want to get here to say goodbye. Right. They were like, if you want to come here, they were like, if you want to say goodbye. You were on the
way to an event.
Yep. They're like, you need to come right now. And I was like, no, I'm all set. I had my goodbye last night. But anyways, he had passed away. And I felt that pulling. And, I thought it was just because I was psychic, to be honest with you. And then what was weird is that Alexa's stepfather had passed away. Yep. And Alexa won't step foot in a doctor's office and a hospital.
Oh God, I start sweating just at my OBGYN appointments. So they don't even do anything to me.
She wouldn't even put the gown on when she goes to the doctor's appointments. I'm like, put the gown on. She's like, I don't want them to be in the hospital clothes.
I'm like, I don't like it. I don't like any of it.
So what was crazy is that like your stepdad had been sick for quite some time. I had gone to see him. Alexa would not go and see him. My parents went to see him. Everyone went to see him. Your sister went to see him. And Alexa's like, I can't go. I can't be around that. I can't be part of that.
Except a particular morning where I was FaceTiming my mom. I said, I think I'm going to come today. And she was like, oh no, like today's not the day. Like if you were going to come, like today's definitely not the day. And she's like, you're not going to, she knows how I am. She's like, you're not going to want to, see this. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to come. Like I have to come. I have to come. And I told you, and I'm like, I think I got to go. And you're like, oh, I don't know, Alexa, like, you know how you are. Like, think about it. But like, if you have to go, I'll take you. But think about it. Maybe ask your sister, see what's going on. So as we got like every hour, every few minutes that grew like closer, it was like, I remember I was like, oh my God, in the Starbucks drive-thru, I was like crawling out of my skin. And I'm like, I gotta go. I have to go now. Like, we have to go now. Like, we're going to get this coffee and we're going. Like, so I called up my sister and I'm like, I'm going today. And luckily she said the same thing. And she was like, okay, like I'll go too. But it was just, I wasn't even like scared in that moment. I just
knew. It's like a calm came over you.
I knew I had to be there. I just knew it was a calling. It was a feeling like I've never felt before. Literally crawling out of my skin. Like I had to teleport there. Like I already had to be there. And sure enough, I showed up and I couldn't stay for too long, but proud of what I did do. But when
you went in, you talked to him.
Yeah, talked to him. We brought our son who's his first grandchild. And we brought him and and Royce was so calm. Like he was 1 at the time and he was so calm and he didn't think anything of it. And he just kind of looked at him and touched him. And, you know, I said my goodbyes, right? Not even goodbye. I think I just said like, I love you and I'm here. And you kind of said your voice and within a half hour after that.
Well, you left the room. Passed. So Alexa left. What ended up happening? Yeah, I left. Alexa left the room, and we were like, you know what? We're gonna leave for like 10 minutes and come back. So because Alexa wanted to get Royce in the car. Yeah. And literally, what was just
that's right. You kind of stayed behind, but in the parking lot, right? You guys texted and was like, yeah.
So Alexa, so she was gonna bring Royce out to the car. I'm like, I'll go and stay with Royce in the car. And I looked at her, I'm like, do you want to go back in the room? And she's like, no, I'm at peace. I said everything I had to say.
Yeah, I felt good about that.
And then literally, we went back into the room and he was gone. He just took his last breath. That was it. It's like he saw Alexa, he saw the baby. And if we would have got there 5 or 10 minutes afterwards, we would have missed everything. Yeah. Like she felt at that moment to go. Have you seen that happen with people where they felt to go?
Even if they couldn't before.
You know, I think what I notice more than the families expressing that is the patients who will wait for somebody to arrive or wait for somebody to leave. Mm-hmm. You know, that happens all the time. More often people wait for someone to leave before they're able to die. I just can always like reflect on all of these situations where there were people that were vigiling at the bedside and the person was just hanging in there. And then the second they walk out the door, that person dies. So, But I would say, you know, I'm sure like I can't recall any family saying, I just felt the need to come here right now. I'm not saying that never happened. I'm just saying when you've taken care of thousands of dying people, you don't remember every situation that's ever happened, you know?
Right. I think my grandfather on my dad's side is pretty much in his last few weeks or last few moments. And he just absolutely adores our son. Basically has dementia. Like we'll forget everything other than our son and like our son's name and just how great our son is. It's funny because now he's going to be a great grandfather of 2
in a week.
In a week, 7 days. So we think that he's pretty much hanging on just for the birth of our next one. And then we think that he's probably going to end up as well.
But wait, is. Yeah.
I have this thing, Penny. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing. You tell me. So I always ask, like, everyone's always afraid to like talk about the subjects, right? So like I asked Alexa's grandfather, I'm like, you know, do you think that you're dying? Do you think you're leaving this world? Like, do you think like I ask him the honest questions and it's, oh my God, your yaya gets so pissed at me. Like, what are you asking him? What are you asking him? But she'll listen.
Yeah.
And he'll be honest. He'll be like,
he's very honest. Yeah. He's just very whatever.
Last time we talked to him and I asked him this because he wasn't doing so well. He's like, I just want to come to your wedding. Right, I'm going to wait for the wedding. Then he said to me, "I'm not going yet. I want to wait for your kid to be born." Right after. It's funny because now when this baby was coming, I asked him the same question. He goes, "How long?"
He's like, "What's this one do?" Because he's the one actually that's 93 or 92. Yeah. So, but we just had this conversation as well, and we had a lot of these conversations because we knew you were coming on tonight. Okay, how is this going to go? Either we are going to be able to have the baby and then go visit, like he'll be our first visit with the new baby, or maybe he'll just hear, like, you know, my family will update him and say, hey, listen, you know, Alexa's good. She's recovering. Baby's here. And then that might be his moment to go. So we're kind of wondering like what it might be. But yeah, it's very interesting.
Have you found... So I guess the question is that, have you found that people will wait for a certain moment, right? Like wait for a baby to be born or die at the same time as a baby being born, or like, because there are no coincidences, right? And sometimes I see during my reading, and what the souls will tell me is that, like, for example, let's say a daughter is giving birth and at that same moment the father's dying in the hospital and they're like, why did this have to happen? Why couldn't it? It's like, No, he knew. Like, he knew at that moment that you were going to be okay. He didn't want to stress you out. You were being a new mom, so on and so forth.
That's right.
Have you seen those moments play out, like almost in synchronicity?
Yes, I have seen those things where somebody's waiting for an event, something to happen before they die. I had 2 patients one time who died on the same day. They were a married couple. They'd been together for like 60 years. Our rooms were single rooms, but they were both on hospice. And since they were a married couple, we squished 2 beds into the room. And in the morning, the person that was closest to the door died. I don't remember if it was the husband or the wife. They died first. And so we were like, well, no, I'm sorry. It was the person closest to the window that died first. That's right. Because we didn't want to have the mortuary come and take that person out or past the one who was still
around.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Right. They were unresponsive and actively dying anyway. But so this one died first. And then, so we waited. We were like waiting all day, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because it was getting close to the end of our shift and we didn't want to leave a body in the room for the next shift. So we're waiting. And finally, right before the end of our shift, that one died too. And so then the mortuary came and picked them both up and took them out at the same time. So yeah, husband and wife died on the very same day in the very same room. So that was pretty amazing. Yeah.
Do you find like that, like when couples are so close to that and so close to age, where like they've been with each other for, 70 years or 60 years or however many years that it is, that like they'll, like one will pass and another one will pass within a week or within a few days?
Sometimes, they do say that lots of times that somebody will die and then within a year their spouse will die. And actually what I think happens in that case often is that if the spouse was taking care of that person who was on hospice, it really depletes them physically, and sometimes they don't live very long because they've had to take care of that person at the expense of their own health. So I think that's part of why people sometimes die close together. But in a situation like that, when you're talking about the same day or a few weeks apart, I think it's more like they are just synchronized in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it just happened with our neighbors who we love so much.
Yeah.
The wife was the caretaker. She was taking care of her husband. She got sick. She passed away, pretty much unexpectedly. And then, all of a sudden, 3 days later, her husband had passed away. And it was like, everybody was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like that's
the one that we moved into their house, 7 days exactly.
7 days
That's
exactly?
what it was. It
Wow.
was 7 days exactly to the week. It was like she passed or no, he passed. I'm sorry. 7 days later, she
I mean, I believe in true love like that.
Was it opposite? What was it?
She passed
And then he passed. Okay.
That's more synchronized. Yeah. So I wanted to talk to Alexa about this death anxiety that you have. For one thing, I want to reassure you that it's really, really common. And I had no idea how common it was until I started doing social media and people were telling me that they were afraid of death, but through watching my videos, they're not afraid anymore. And I get messages like this constantly, like ever since I've been on social media for 5 years now. I still get messages from people all the time, emails, DMs, comments, not afraid of death since I started watching your videos. I think really when you get to a place of being able to accept that death is inevitable and you have no control over it and you can just like put it behind you, it just helps you to focus on living your life and letting go of that. When I first started working in hospice and seeing people deathbed, so I have no religious background at all. I did not believe in an afterlife. I started working in hospice and I start seeing people deathbed visioning. And that was what started getting me to be like, oh, okay. So part of my fear was rooted in worrying about there being nothing after we die. That was part of my fear. So
that
seeing,
was mine too.
Seeing deathbed visions really helped me to believe like there is something more. That I don't know, Alexa, if you've ever seen somebody having a deathbed vision, but it's just incredibly profound when somebody is like crying and telling you, my wife is here, she's right there, she's coming to get me. It's just unbelievable to watch these things. But believable, I shouldn't say it's unbelievable. It's believable. When you see this, you feel like, why can't I see them too? And that helped really to alleviate that death anxiety in me. When I left the bedside and started doing a quality assurance role instead, which is more administrative, I felt that death anxiety creeping up in me again, like this worrying about death. And then I got on social media and started talking about it to people all the time, educating about it. And all of a sudden, death anxiety gone again. And I realized, like, you don't have to be a hospice nurse. You don't have to see people deathbed visioning to get over death anxiety. You just have to get to a place of accepting that it is what it is. You have no control. And, you know, it just takes the power out of it to be able to do that, to say, like,
listen, Penny, I need to work on that daily. That's in my life. I'm like, I have a control issue. I am so nervous about birth. I mean, things that I cannot control, it does not sit well with me. But
I think a lot of people that have death anxiety are people like you and like me who want to be in control.
Oh, that's just how it is. And death to me, I just don't like the, I think what it is with me is like the permanent. I don't like it, but it's not, I know with what you do, I know I'm going to hear it from, but it's not permanent, but it is to me. It is like, I don't know. I don't know. That's just where I'm at with it. But you're so right. It's definitely a control issue. It's definitely like, I need to work on accepting, but like I said, I haven't even been able to do that with giving birth. So, I mean, I'm a lost cause right now. But I'm going to take your advice and I'm going to look through your social media, because you've already given me so much comfort just in this podcast episode alone. Seriously, you do have a way of delivering. And I feel like I'm much like you, where I really like education. I like to educate myself on things. I almost like to know too much. So, you do such a good way of educating, like you said, like, and I know you said you enjoy it, and that's what helped you. And that's kind of how I get there, even with birth. Like, you know, I'll like look at every possible scenario and why that would happen and why that would happen and how that can happen. So I appreciate that you like to educate as well, because I think that's really important for people like me out there who are very, very, very afraid.
Well, that's the reason why I wanted to have
knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, and we will fear the unknown all the time. So the more we know, the less we fear.
Amen.
That is so true.
Well, that's the reason why I have you on, because I got to tell you, the number one reason why people come to me isn't just because they want to hear from someone who had passed away. It's because they're afraid of death and dying. They're afraid. They want to know, you know, what's it like? Does it sting? Is there an afterlife? You know, and so many people, like I said, are afraid to ask these questions. And I think, you know, not just because of the person that you are, you know, Penny, but just because of the topic itself. I mean, millions of people you can see are coming to you for these answers, and you have them, and you have the knowledge to share. And you're just a wonderful person and you know, all around. So I want to thank you so much for being here with us. And I also want to talk about your book.
I was just going to say, we have to talk about the book. We have to talk about the book, because that is an awesome title. One.
Where can you get it? Where can you get it? What's in it? And more importantly, do we get to know the secrets about you back in the day?
Yes, you do, actually. So it is available anywhere books are sold online. So Barnes & Noble, Tertulia, Amazon. There's an audio version that I narrated on Audible or audiobook. You can order it through a bookstore. I don't know that many bookstores are carrying it on their shelf, but you can get it through a bookstore. It is a memoir, and it's really about my journey, my life, what I went through when I was younger, the things that led me to be a hospice nurse, and how working with the dying really changed how I feel about living. And and it talks a lot about my death anxiety. There's a whole chapter in there about my death anxiety and my perspective on that. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the one more thing really quickly, the fear that we were talking about fear, and people come to you, Matt, because of their fear around dying. And is there anything after this? You know, it's really interesting when people are on hospice and they're dying, their fear usually isn't about what happens after death. It's how will dying be for me? Will it be uncomfortable? Will I be in pain? And will my family be okay after I'm gone?
Yeah, I hear those same things from the souls.
People, they get to a place of acceptance of death. When people are first told that they're going on hospice, most people, they're going to be scared. Like, I would even be scared. If somebody said, you're going to die within 6 months, we're pretty sure, I'd be like, fuck, that sucks. I don't want, you know, I would be scared, you know, even though I'm not really afraid of death. I'm not afraid of death anymore. But they come on, and at first they're really like, scared and sad, and that's understandable. But they get to this place of, okay, well, now that I know this, now I know that the treatment's not going to work anymore. I don't have to wonder about that. Now I know that I'm going to probably die within 6 months. Let me focus on what I have control over and can have fun with until I die. And they let go of that fear about what happens after death. It's really more about, will dying be okay for me? Is it going to be scary or hard? Is it going to be painful? Am I going to suffer? And is my family going to be okay?
That's what I think about.
Well, I love that you do that for people. And if you haven't followed Nurse Penny yet, you have to go right now on Instagram, on TikTok.
Yes, because you have a nice sense of humor sometimes as well when it comes to this, which I think humor brings us all together, no matter if you're scared of death, you love death, you can't wait to die, or you're terrified of it. Like, humor really just has a way of like softening people a little bit. So I love that you do that as well. I mean, you're doing incredible work. You're helping people, and you're just a very, very special person. So I'm honored that we get to talk to you today.
And I love the skits.
Yes. That's what it is. We were just laughing last night. We were giggling about the skit of the, you said when your patient's like 70 years old and they said they see their parent, but you turn around and it's actually their 90-year-old parent. That is just so awesome. So I love your creativity. I love the way you bring humor into it. And, how you just share so many of your different experiences because you've worked with thousands of people, which is incredible.
Death is a dark topic, and I like to lighten it up.
I feel like you do the same, Matt. So you know what? It's great. You guys are great. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Just a little bit of That's a nervous laugh.
It is a nervous laugh.
All right, you guys, you can follow Hospice Nurse Penny on Instagram and TikTok. You guys got to check her out. And thank you for being here for another episode of Undeniable Proof.
Yes.